Thank you very much, Joe, and good morning, everyone. I think we need to try this again. I know it's early, and I know you've all made it a point to get here. Good morning, everyone. That's more like it. Welcome to this event. I want to thank the International Economic Forum of the America for giving us this opportunity to be able to host the Latin American Bilateral Trade Initiative Breakfast. And our panels this morning, you'll hear from them very shortly. I want to thank them very much for being here. And of course, I want to thank my city, your city, the city of Toronto, for putting on this event. I also want to thank Joe Clark. Joe has been here since its inception, and Joe has always been able to introduce the event to starting. So, Joe, thank you very much. A big round of applause for Joe Clark, please. So 2019 marks the 5th year since the inception of this event, which began July 15th, 2015. And it began as part of what was then an extremely significant event in the city of Toronto. It was formed during the Pan American Games. It was actually held here in the city of Toronto. And it was a great event then, and it continues to be. So I'm actually thrilled to be entering another year of the Latin American trade activities. LAPT has created opportunities for our local businesses, but more importantly, it has actually created stronger ties between the city of Toronto and our Latin American partners and so on. We have a strong Latino community in the city of Toronto, men and women who are exceptional in the activities that they do, exceptional contributors to making our city a great place, and I want to thank you so much for what you do. I'd also like to thank all of the ambassadors and also the consul generals that are here with us and their staff for making this event a tremendous success. So a big round of applause for all of those who are here. Today, we continue to promote, and as is our practice, to focus on trade and investment opportunities to ensure that we could generate economic prosperity for all. And so it's extremely important. So I want to thank the ambassadors that are here with me on stage that are basically here to talk with you this morning, to talk about their perspective and their ideas around technology and so on. And I'm going to just switch places and move over to my seat here. So, can you hear me okay? Excellent. So this morning we have, and I'm just looking to my left and I realize they're all men sitting with me. And I know that we were to have another member of the panel who is not a male, and unfortunately she could not be here. So let me first of all apologize for that, because obviously economic opportunities and development and so on is a collaboration amongst all of us. And so members of the community, we know that we're not all men who are making great economic decisions. Am I right, ladies and gentlemen? Absolutely. So I'd like to now just introduce the ambassador of Argentina, and I apologize if I may mess up a bit of the names and so on. So I apologize in advance, because I'm sure I may. So Eugenio Curia, the ambassador of course, of Argentina. And we also have with us the ambassador of Colombia, Mr. H.E. Federico Eduardo Hoyos Salazar. Thank you. And we have the ambassador of Peru, Mr. Roberto Rodrìguez Arnillas, and the ambassador of Uruguay, Mr. Martin Vidal. And so I know in the past we've had a number of questions and so on, and we're hoping not to run into the situation where we run out of time for the audience. So I'm going to just say to the audience, we are going to create an opportunity for you to ask questions. So please, if you could start getting your questions ready so that when that opportunity comes forward and so on, you're ready to go. And so members of the panel, there are tremendous amount of technological development that's actually taking place. And in that, there is a requirement for economies to change and to shift their processes, in essence, to diversify the production and trade with the goals of becoming a lot more tech knowledgeable and intensive in terms of the economy. So there's a great shift. And so there's a requirement to plan that shift. As we know, we have a lot of millennials, we have a lot of young people that are utilizing technology in a way that maybe 10, 15 years ago, we didn't think it was possible. Now it is. And so for those economies that were simply focusing on certain methods of production and so on, we're now moving into a more intellectual, technological age. And so there's a requirement to shift and change the way we have actually done things and the way that business has been done. And so if you don't change in order to diversify and reflect the way that the world is moving, then your economy is in trouble. So I want to find out from you, how are your respective countries preparing for the opportunities focusing on technology? And I'm not sure who would like to start. So I don't know, why don't I start with you, Martin? We'll start with you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Michael. Let me begin by commending your job as a real champion here in the city of Toronto, building these bridges between Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and South America. We really appreciate your work, and Linda's and the rest of the team, and of course our Consul General. So very pleased and an honor to be here again, like 2 years ago. This is a great event. We really like. We have people colleagues from the government coming every year since the last 3 years, and it's always refreshing because there is something that changes your mind a little bit. This new idea that makes you think twice, a concept that you already had fixed in your mind. And this happened to me by the end of the first day of the forum. We attended with a colleague a side fire chat with the former NASA administrator, Dan Gilmour, and he was asked by the interviewer which will be the commodity of the future. And I expected an answer connected to technology, and he said food. So we are food producing countries. So in the future we will be fine. But to get to the future, we have to deal with the present, and the present is exactly as you said. We need to diversify production, diversify trade, and technology products. The knowledge-based economy is a great avenue to do that. This sector provides very good quality jobs that are perfect for our youth. That is very difficult for them to start participating in the labor market. This is a clean sector that doesn't contaminate, basically. This promotes education and talent, so it's the enrichment of the human beings as such. So we think that this is a very, very good opportunity to participate better and more in the international economy. Luckily, in our case, many years ago, like almost 50 years ago, a group of academics thought that programming software would be a good idea. It would be something of the future. So since then, government, entrepreneurs, and the academy have been working together to create an enabling and healthy ecosystem for this sector to thrive with important fiscal stimulus, providing the tools for the young to learn about this, and to work together for the private sector to take advantage of it. And this is a very dynamic sector. So the idea of that was a consensus in Uruguay, that we have to work together, private sector, public sector, and the academy to create these conditions. And this, with time, it happened. And now we have a thriving sector that is taking a good opportunity, who has zero unemployment in the IT sector in Uruguay. So it's a constant challenge to be a part of it. And in this regard, there are 2 or 3 elements that we think that are worth sharing. First of all, is to put in the hands of the young children since a very early age be in contact with technology. And in that regard, there is a very interesting project that we started in Uruguay more than 12 years ago. It's called the Plan Ceibal. It's the application in one country of the one laptop per child initiative that in the late 90s was coined in the US. So now we are, after 12 years, we are having the first generations of youth, of young teenagers that started in contact with that since they were 6 years old. So the transition from academic, from the studying to the workplace is very smooth. And this is a good advantage. And of course, the integration with countries that have a strong IT sector is key. And I think this is what we are doing here, trying to connect our countries to other countries that are strong with IT in order to partner together.
Excellent. So, Eugenio, could we get you then to give us your perspective on this matter?
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming very early, at least for me. It's a pleasure to be here again, and as Martin said, you are the key figure in the launch of Toronto bridges to Latin America and all the commercial and economic activities. I also want to highlight that my Deputy Consul General from Argentina in Toronto is listening here, and she plays a good role with you on a permanent basis and with the Economic Council. I know everybody knows that, as Martin says also, our countries are agri-economic producers, but at the same time, we have been dealing with, let's put it, science and technological-based industries. In this field, Argentina has a very peculiar situation, putting aside the peculiarities of the economy of Argentina every 5 or 10 years. But even then, there has been always 3 main big fields in which Argentina has been sort of leader in the region. The one is on the nuclear field. I mean, during the last 20 years, Argentina has exported nuclear plants for research and for isotopes to Peru, to Algeria, to Egypt, to Australia. So that has created a big network and cluster on science and technology dealing with the nuclear affairs. Something related is on the satellite area. And the final one is in nanotechnology. So Argentina has had these small activities or big activities in small, very sophisticated fields. And in order to make the long story short, there are 2 main elements nowadays. The first one is that through the pressure of the different clusters dealing with knowledge-based and tech-based economy, the government approved last May, so recently, a statute which title is Regime for the Promotion of the Knowledge Economy. And then there are basically 10 big fields in which the government is concentrating some sort of fostering ahead, like going on software, computer and digital services, audiovisual, biotech, bioeconomy. We'll come back to bioeconomy, biology, microbiology, bioinformatics, geological, professional services for export, nanotechnology, satellite aerospace, nuclear industry, and goods and services, automation solutions in production, etc. So this is the result of a long discussion and long pushing from the private sector, the academy, and also some very strong state enterprises dealing basically with nuclear and satellites. And INVAP, which is a well-known half national, half provincial enterprise. But for example, referring to bioeconomy, I've been reading, and I suggest you to have a look, the last report of the Economic Commission for Latin America, which is based in Santiago, is the one of the regional economic commissions that the UN has, where it compares basically the export of all the members of the ECLAC, and Argentina has roughly a 20% of exports based on knowledge base and tech base, and especially on bioeconomy. So it's a tendency that is going to be strengthened in the next year to come. So far, this new statute on regime for the promotion of the knowledge economy goes in getting, to a certain extent, the 36 clusters dealing all over the country with this type of industries and production, and then getting fiscal stability, social security, better conditions, less taxes, etc., sort of advantages in order to foster them. All in all, the percentage of knowledge-based and tech-based products or services, basically, in the export is growing little by little, up and up. And I do think that most of our countries are in the same track, depending on the proportion, let's put it, in the inception within the international trade that will foster possibilities that also within our countries there will be some sort of joint ventures, and private enterprises are working on that. So let me stop here for next questions or whatever it is. Thank you,
fantastic. Thank you, Federico.
Michael, thank you so much for this great invitation. Big honor to be here. Very big hi to my team at the Consulate General, team mostly composed of women. The 21st century is made out of it's women power for sure. And our government is one of the governments who has a paritary cabinet, 50-50. First in history, first woman vice president in Colombia's history. Un saludo a todos los colombianos, buenos días, and thank you to the Global Economic Forum for this kind of invitation. You asked about how to prepare ourselves with this new century and economic changes. Colombia is a young country. 7 out of 10 Colombians are younger than 40 years old. That might explain the age of the ambassador to Canada. Colombia has more cell phones than people. It has a great connectivity, one of the fastest internet in the region, and also one of the greatest internet access in all of the region. The World Economic Forum opened one of its 5 centers for the 4th Industrial Revolution in Medellin this year. That shows that there is a special focus on the world in Colombia as a source of talent. Martin said something that's very interesting. It's that the commodity of Uruguay might be food, and that's great because it's a complementary world stage. Ours, and if you have to take one message this morning out of what Colombia is aiming to, please only take this word: creativity. That's our big focus right now. President Duque, a 42-year-old president, current president of Colombia, is a great champion of what he calls the orange economy. What is the orange economy? The economy of the creative sectors. This might sound a little strange, but let me give you a couple of facts. The orange economy in Colombia, the arts, books, creativity, apps, everything that has to do with this sector, creativity sector, creates the same number of jobs as the coffee sector does in Colombia, one of our most well-known sectors in the history. But also the revenue that the orange economy produces in Colombia is the same revenue that oil and gas produce in Colombian exports. So this is really an engine of economic development and economic growth. What are we doing as a government in order to promote creativity and promote the economic sector? We have taken off 7 years of taxes for those companies abroad, who are from abroad, who come to Colombia, open up an office, and have a creative component. 7 years, no income taxes to pay to the government. So we are really focusing on that. And just let me finish something else to say. Colombia just created, and this might sound like bureaucracy, but this only shows the importance we give to the creativity and to the economic development of the orange economy. We created a vice ministry of creativity and the orange economy. This means that every single week during the cabinet meeting that the president has with all of his cabinet, creativity is a key component that's being discussed every single week.
Wow, it's interesting. I think so great amount of consideration and thoughts being put into this in terms of the opportunity of change, and it has to be planned. And I think that's what I'm hearing, which is sort of central to the theme that's being stated here. Lots of thoughts being put into this by governments, and of course, governments in collaboration with industry has to bring about the changes, but the government has to set that environment of change and policies that are in place and so on. So what I'd like to now do is hear from Roberto and to hear your thoughts, and then we can get into our second component of the question. But I'm going to change up the format a bit because I want to ask Roberto, after you're finished, I'd like to get members to think a little bit about sort of the element of education and how we prepare that talent pool to be trained for this new economy, if you will. So, but I'd like to turn it over to you now, Roberto, for the first question.
Thank you, Michael. First of all, I would like to join the voices that precede me in congratulating for organizing this event, and I'm honored to be part of, and also I commending all your hard work in giving a space, a voice to the Latin American community here in Toronto, and giving us the opportunity of addressing to this distinguished gathering. I just wanted to give you a swift snapshot on Peru regarding two key factors that right now are very important for increasing competitiveness and productivity, which are innovation and technology. No? We heard the example of Colombia, which is very relevant and surprises me. How are you doing right now? No? In the case of Peru, we realize how important it is, as I mentioned, innovation and technology. And one of the big challenges that we have as a country is that we have to allocate in our budget more funds for research and development. We are not at the same level of Canada. For instance, Canada allocates between 1.5 and 1.8% of their GDP, but in the case of Peru, we are just in 0.12, 0.12, which is low. Yes. And taking into account that Peru is a country that his exports are more focused on primary products. So Peru is a global mining leader country. We are a worldwide producers of fish meal and oil fish, and we began to create a very large agro-industry sector. But for us, it's very important to increase the competitivity and mostly the productivity of those sectors, and to obviously diversify our production as Uruguay is doing. Martin has been saying that. So that's the big challenge, and RD and plus to create a network of technological institutes. So where is that's one of the most important things in which the current administration, President Vizcarra, is very focused. As you know, he was the former Peruvian ambassador to Canada, and he was able to tell how Canada is very focused in creating this network of technological institutes. So we've been able to receive cooperation from Canada, and we have created for the first time within our armed forces a technological institute. And that in Peru, the military service is voluntary, and the people that enter to the armed forces to serve the country has the opportunity to study in this technological institute. So when they finish their service, they have the capacity to be part of the Peruvian economy, to the formal Peruvian economy, which this is another big challenge that we have because our economy, unfortunately, 50% is informal, no? So what I wanted to point out here is the importance of innovation and technology. Many people, many analysts say regarding many countries from other parts of the world that they have a low-cost labor, and that's something that creates a loyal competition with other countries. But no, we're in the 21st century. We have entered the fourth industrial revolution. We have the drones, artificial intelligence, in which Canada is leading the way, 3D printing, and so on. So right now, the most important thing is where resides the highest innovation and technological advances, and where the workers have the greatest skills. So those concepts are very keen for the Peruvian government, and we are working on it to try to, for instance, to replicate the Canadian example. No?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, education plays a key role in how that particular sector is developed in order to pursue the challenges and the opportunity that the information and the technology change or technological changes that are coming about is extremely important. So I want to ask the questions about how you're educating your population in order to take on this new opportunity. But I also want to, because this audience is here, many are located here in Toronto, and a Canadian audience primarily, there is obviously an opportunity, and we've seen the expanded opportunity of trade between Canada and Latin American countries as a whole. I would think of Canada as being a partner in that particular perspective, especially the diaspora that are here. How is it then, Canada as a partner, what is that opportunity in terms of being able to do business in this new knowledge economy that you speak of, and the complementary with respect to education and so on? So I wonder if we can start with Eugenio, may we start with you, maybe to address that particular question?
Thank you, Michael. Okay. On the question of trade and increasing it, to a certain extent, Canada and our economies, which are the ones who are based in agro-industry, to a certain extent, they are competitive. So, but nevertheless. In general terms, in all our continent, Canada has been dealing with extractive industries through history. Now they are approaching a more mature level. Even if we try to find different avenues, niche, etc., it's not very easy. You have to recognize that. But we have to keep on working on how to find new ventures, possibilities, etc. Canada is always very interested and is very a good expertise in dealing with clean energy, extractive industries, etc. So in the case of Argentina, where we have the second huge unconventional shale gas area in Vaca Muerta, so there are plenty of Canadian services industries dealing with that. Now, dealing with the issue also of education or instruction and education, I mean, all our countries, but in Argentina in particular, having a high level of literacy, the point is how you adapt young guys for the market with the knowledge and capacities in order to catch up with the IT society, with the knowledge and tech-based industry, etc. And for example, we are refocusing because we need more engineers than we have every year. And also we have to face a situation in which plenty of professionals who has been getting their degree through the universities, state universities, then they're attempting to go abroad. So, which makes a sort of difficulty to catch up with the whole guys dealing with creativity, innovation, etc. But we have focused on that. Basically, the curricula and syllabus has been redirected, but still we are working hard on that. We do have, as I said, a high level of literacy and several institutes from the state and private which has focused on very specific fields or specialities within the high tech and within the syllabus dealing with all the biotechnologies, etc., etc. So new universities or new faculties catching up the, and I mean, on the other hand, Argentina has 2 or 3 unicorns, which are with shares in New York, etc. So on that hand, this area or this field is going at decent high speed. So we have no trouble on that.
Thank you. Martin?
Okay, thank you. This is a great point. And this is the point that actually will define if we are able or not to participate in the economy. So I'm glad that at the beginning it sounded how you can get these two together, but you must. So in our case, in Uruguay's case, there are, I think, 2 features of how to approach education. First, as I mentioned in my first remarks, you need to start very early. Very early, and in our case, that means the first year of elementary school. So you, at the moment you reach a level of university, you are very familiar with programming. You are very familiar with dealing everything digitally. The second feature is to be broad enough in the education to give the tools to approach any specificity that the demand will require. Because the knowledge and technology solutions are for everything. There is an application for anything. So it's very difficult to specialize in every different possibility that we have. Of course, there is a tendency in all our countries to put emphasis in putting knowledge and technology that supports the main drivers of our economy, and agri-food is a case in our country, and financial sector as well. But the idea is to provide a strong basic knowledge and preparedness for the technology. With that, the students and later the labor force will be ready to adapt quickly to the needs of a specific market. That's our feature in Uruguay. And then it comes the connection with Canada. In general terms, we are very happy, all of us and other colleagues in Ottawa, to see a rediscovering phase between Canada and South America. The trade diversification strategy is matching the willingness of all our countries to negotiate free trade agreements and to get closer. So this is a big driver. And in the case of education, and I'm getting closer to Canada, there is a strong base here. It's very good universities. You have the Toronto cluster, the Waterloo Corridor cluster. We're trying to get the 2 sides together. And for example, in May this year, Toronto provided an excellent platform for that in Coalition, and we brought 15 companies that came here, all young people that are connected and learning the startup systems of Toronto and the region. So I see very good opportunities to do more of these interactions and exchanges between our young people and Canadians.
Fantastic. Thank you. Frederick?
Let me divide my answer into 2 parts, education and then Canada. Education. As you might know, Colombia is one of the newest members of the OECD. And even though Colombia is a new member, we have many challenges to keep up with OECD countries, such as Canada, of course. The percentage of the GDP we invest in innovation right now is less than 1%. One of our goals as a government is to invest at least 1% of our GDP in innovation. That's one. 2, sometimes we speak about the skills for the 4th industrial revolution. And we might think very complex things such as programming. But really, there are more simple and impacting issues such as bilingualism for Colombians. We need the Colombian population, young guys and girls, to speak English in the first place, to be connected with the world, and we are focusing on bilingualism as a government. Now, Canada, and investment opportunities for you guys, and for us too. Two very big sectors, cannabis and renewables. Let me speak about renewables first. Colombia has the 6th most clean energy matrix in the world. 70% of our energy matrix is hydro. This means that it's really clean. Only 30% is coal. Nonetheless, we want to become one of the greatest powers in the region in clean energy. We produce 50 megawatts of clean energy right now. Our goal as a government is to end in 4 years producing 1,500 megawatts of clean energy. We have a public bidding on October in order to have companies bidding in this bid to have new infrastructure for renewables. So there's a very big opportunity in renewables in Colombia, especially solar, of course, and wind. We have one of the greatest wind capacities in the north of the country in La Guajira. There's a great potential to have an eolic park there. Now, cannabis, which is one of Canada's main economic drivers right now.
Who knew?
Who knew? Let me be clear with this. Colombia we don't have recreational cannabis in Colombia, as Uruguay does. But we have a very strong legislation in order for legal, scientific, and medicinal cannabis. And Colombia is a great country to have cannabis. We have great infrastructure. Our energy is good. Our sun is very bright, so it makes plants grow much faster, much economical, because you don't have to invest so much in energy, because we have such a good and stable sunshine during all the year. But we also have a very skilled labor in that sector. And I think it's a beautiful opportunity of Colombia, because Colombia has been a country, let me be very clear with this, we acknowledge our issues in our past, a country that has been related to drugs. Well, we have the opportunity now to turn the ball around and be a great power in legal cannabis, who's creating benefits for patients and benefits to people who want to have a better lifestyle through legal cannabis. And of course, Canada has two things. First, it has the money to invest, but secondly, it has the R&D. So we have the sunshine, we have the labor, we have the land, and you have what we need. So I think this is a new opportunity for Canada and Colombia to come closer together.
That's fantastic. Those relationships, ladies and gentlemen, we have to ensure that we can enhance them so you can create wealth and so on for yourselves and your families. Certainly you can create wealth so that we can actually tax some of those wealth, because government who does not have the ability to tax wealth cannot succeed. I know you don't like taxation, but we know that it's intended for great purposes and everyone benefits, whether or not it's your hospital, your roads, your schools, all the amazing things that taxes are utilized to help our society and so on. And so I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, to get your questions ready. We're going to have enough time, I hope, to be able to allow you to ask your questions. So please do get your questions ready. We're going to, in the past, we've sort of ran out of time for questions, and we're allowing a lot more time today. So I would like now to have Roberto just answer or respond to the question that I've posed. Roberto?
Yes, of course. I'm going to be brief. I'm watching the clock. I have to say the same that Martin has already mentioned, the importance of giving the access of the education regarding technology, about the technologies at the earliest stage. In that sense, I was mentioning in Peru, we have this lack of funds for funding research and development, but in education we have increased our budget and we are focused on that, and we are forging a partnership with the private sector. There is a wonderful experience in Peru. A big bank has created a network of schools. The name is Innova. It's like innovation, Innova in Spanish, in which they are dedicated to forge the kids at the earliest stage in giving their access about IT and to know what IT is. And all the the potential that they have to give education, access to information, and so on. So this example has been very successful. There's no profit at all in this school. It's just the cost of there's no profit. It's just the cost of the education. And in this state, the government has already begun to see this experience, and they are trying to replicate it. So that's one point. The second one is after school. In Peru, as everybody, when they finish school, they are interested in studying to be a lawyer or to be economist or to be an architect or engineer. And when you see the technical side, we have big holes to fill. And so that's why the government right now is very focused, as I was mentioned at my first intervention, to create a network of technological institutes. Obviously, not at the highest level, highest standards, taking advantage of the technologies and all the innovations. So that's why we are working closely with Canada. We see Canada as a key and strategic partner in forging this network of technological institutes. And so far, we have been able to create 2 more institutes in the south of Peru, and everybody right now is telling and that the technical side is very important, and so all these institutes are full of people, and this is very, very interesting. Everybody was in their minds, I have to be a lawyer or economist because I want to have a very good income and so on. But right now, the technical people are winning more money than the lawyers and the economists, because our economy in Peru is booming. We've been growing in the last 24 years and at the highest average level of the region, and there's a lack of people to fill in the agro-industry, in the mining, and so on. So that's why we are very focused on the technological side, and we are focused in giving opportunities at the early stage in the education regarding the technological innovation. So.
Oh, excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've laid the ground. I think somebody wanted to applause. Do you want to applause? Because I think they've given some great response. So, big round of applause for our panelists so far. So we have just under 20 minutes, and in the last series of breakfasts that we've had, we've left about 5 minutes for questions, and we found that not to be enough. We've got about 20 minutes, and so we've laid a bit of a groundwork here. We talk a little bit about the transition from a more production-based type of economy to a more knowledge and technological economy. We talked about education. We've talked about what is required to engage the millennials and so on, Generation X, into this new economy dynamics and so on. We've also talked a little bit about the relationship between Canada and the respective countries and so on. So obviously Latin America is open for business. There's an opportunity for us to be engaged, and you've heard from the ambassadors here today about the things that are taking place in those respective countries. And I know that all countries of Latin America is not represented on the stage, and I realize that, but I think that with respect to the way things are in competition, usually people are watching each other to see how advanced different countries and cities are doing things, so you want to be able to compete, so you're staying close to the edge, if you will, in order to ensure that you don't get left behind. So now this is the area and the opportunity for you, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to ask our distinguished guests questions so that we can respond and they can hear from you. So I think that there are some microphones in the room. I don't know who have the microphones and so on, but where are the microphones? See no microphones, but there are supposed to be microphones. I wonder if we can, do we have some microphones, folks? Well, you know what, why don't we just basically take one of our microphones and give it to folks who would like to have questions. We'll start here first. And let's just maybe borrow your mic, and we can use, maybe, I'll give you this one.
Thanks to the panel and to Councilor Thompson, who I had the pleasure to meet first in Argentina, actually.
Good to see you again.
Where we have an office. Thank you. Before I ask my question,
Tell us your name.
My name is Antonio Antonopoulos, yes. And I'm a director at a company called Isla Power that develops solar power and wind energy systems, and we have an office in Argentina, and that's where I met Councilor Thompson. Just a very quick, before my question, quick point about education, which was a great question, and one of the challenges that we had in Argentina was finding qualified engineers and technical people. And I will say that the experience of other people that I know and that have started companies or gone to Argentina, for example, and it was always a big challenge, human resources on engineering. And the ambassador from Peru mentioned, again, building up that technical know-how. It seems like that's a really important point, education. But my question was a little bit self-serving, but it was a point also of the ambassador of Colombia, is all these things, the innovation, education, agriculture, none of this can function without energy. And so I'd like to ask each ambassador how you view renewable energy, solar energy in particular is a good resource for the whole region, but bioenergy, wind energy, these sources of energy are increasing in importance, and one of the reasons why our company is in Argentina, so I know that context, of course, but love to hear the perspective of the other ambassadors as well as the one from Argentina. Thank you.
Okay, who would like to maybe start? Martin? Okay.
It's very simple. All our countries are striving with new ways of energy, being completely hydro, with wind, etc., etc. So we are going, even I will suggest you to go into nuclear too, which is very clean. And in this field, Canada is a champion on clean energies and consultancies in this way. We are going forward. There are investments, etc., with solar. So all our countries are working on that. So it's very simple.
I would like to, gracias Antonio por la pregunta. I would like to answering your question to pick on something that Roberto mentioned on what the children, the youth, when they finish high school, what they're studying. And I think going back to this question from Michael on education, not only in the diplomatic community at an ambassadorial level, we have a gender gap. We also have a big gender gap on this sector, and so all the efforts that the government can make in order to reduce the gender gap in the STEM studies, trying to attract more girls to this field, is something that we have to do, and I think it can be naturally done, the progression to this transition, if you include very early and they become very familiar and comfortable working with the boys on this sector. So it's something that we didn't mention, but I think it's there, and we have to address it, and we are doing it. On the clean energy, even conceptually, this goes hand in hand. You can imagine a millennial like Federico, for example, that is the only one in the panel. I missed it for 4 or 5 years. Not worried about the climate change, and not worried about how his work will impact in the economy. So these are very related matters. Of course, as a business, but also it's very important for the values that person has. So we didn't go nuclear. We went green in Uruguay, and not only for cannabis legalization lately, but the change in the energy matrix with wind and solar power has been tremendous. So in a windy day in Uruguay, 100% of the electricity is produced by renewable energies, and from being dependent on importing oil in the winter 20 years ago, now we export energy to our neighbors. So I couldn't agree more with you that this is a key element, not only for this sector, but the overall economy. The main challenge for us, and I think for everybody, is how to address transport. Because we're heavily dependent on oil in that sector. It's difficult, so the technology apply for the batteries, for trucks, for cars, and try to get that cheaper and affordable for the business. This is the main challenge right now.
Okay, Roberto?
Okay, not just Peru is like Colombia. Its energy is based 70% or a little bit more on hydro. We have a lot of gas as well, and we began to explore the possibility of having solar and wind energy. There's a big company, a French one, ENGIE, that has started to build a place in creating solar energy in the south of Peru. But as Martin said, there's still a big gap between economies. No, to burn oil is cheaper. The important thing, and Peru is very keen in fighting the climate change, is create the consciousness about how important it is to advance in technologies to diminish the prices of the clean energies, in the wind, in solar, and Canada has a very good example in how it's dealing with energy. But its industries are based in oil and gas. So the big challenge here is to try to, through the technology, through the innovation, to increase the productivity. But this productivity is not just meaning to get more money, but to improve the technology, making more clean and less and to diminish the risk of increasing the climate change, the effects of the climate change.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, you said something that's really important, and it's that not all of Latin America is sitting here at this panel. But you know who we really push and work to see sitting here next year? The Democratic Venezuelan ambassador at this panel, hopefully.
So we have some work to do.
We have some work to do. Saying that, let me ask and answer Antonio's question. Colombia is one of the 20 most vulnerable countries to climate change. And Colombia, I don't know if you knew this, Antonio, has 6 or 7 years left of oil and gas reserves that are explored. So we really have a challenge in exploring more, either by new methods, but of course, our big focus is clean energy. As I just said, with our big bid October this year. We just approved one of the most important and ambitious laws in the region to give incentives to electric mobility. President Duque has said that by 2030, he wants to see, or we want to see as a country, more than 600,000 cars, electric cars in our cities and in our roads. But in order to do that, we just don't need electric cars, but clean energy. You cannot have clean cars with not clean energy. So of course, our big focus is not only to explore more, to have new sources of energy, but of course to really invest in solar and in wind. And again, we have one of the greatest, and this is not about saying that Colombia is better than other countries. We work here and we are members of the Pacific Alliance, which is a big strength in order to grow the economy of the region. But yeah, Colombia has one of the most stable sunshines in the region, plus a very big wind capacity in the north of the country in La Guajira.
Thank you. We have time for essentially one more question.
That's
please.
right.
Okay.
I'll try to make it quick.
That's right. Oh, absolutely. We will always make time for women and the questions, so please. Well, why don't we do, can I just then do this? Can I just take the ladies' question first and we'll come back? 'Cause thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's good. Women are the first. Actually, we are talking about the technology all the time. Nowadays, we are talking about robotics. And we have been in many different seminars when technology is the most important point. But I've been here nowadays talking about orange technology. What is the way that you're doing with your countries that actually we represent here with the orange technology that we have to humanize this technology and robotics? And what is the way to do that? Because we are looking that in the future, everything is about robotics, technology, physics, and well, there are many of those, but we want to know what is the bridge between humanity and technology for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I just want to interject for a moment. We had Jeffrey Hinton yesterday talking about AI and talking about what it can do, and I guess most of us seem to think of AI as being taking over. And I think one of the things that he said that humanizing that process is something that we will never want to eliminate. But I'll let our panel answer some of the questions. We've got about 4 minutes, so I'll just get maybe a 30-second response from everyone, and then we have to go to the gentleman. Who'd like to start?
I mean, if you want, in the end, all these advances on knowledge base, high tech, artificial intelligence, etc., in order to foster our production, etc., I mean, in the long run, is to fight, to have a better society, to fight inequality, which is one of the main challenges we have, and in order to create the conditions for growth and development.
Okay.
Then, to bridge the gap between technology and dehumanization, etc., it's for a philosophical discussion with practical approaches for a couple of hours. I have no trouble, but I don't think we have the time.
No, we
but
don't.
In the end, if we are looking forward for inclusive societies, fighting inequality, and giving human beings in our societies a good standard, I mean, we have to use the technology within its limits, but I mean, extracting the maximum benefit from it. Very simple.
And in fact, people will always matter. Always matter. So
I mean,
I'm going
supposed to.
Absolutely. I think that's a great response, and I'm going to accept that as a team response, if that's
Absolutely.
okay. And then we'll go to this gentleman so we can actually get his question in.
Thank you very much,
Would you
Michael.
maybe stand and give us
That's
your
right,
name,
yes.
please?
Thank you very much. I'm Demar Cruz, the Deputy Consul of Brazil here in Toronto. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Michael, for this extraordinary panel that you have arranged. Just one question. We know that it's a reality from all Latin America, from Chile and Argentina to Mexico, that we have a strong qualified workforce abroad, here in Canada, US, and Europe, everywhere. So even in Uruguay, for instance, you talk about the Departamento 20, the 20th Department of Qualified Uruguayans Abroad. Do you have in any other countries a kind of specific strategy of trying to convert these brain drain into brain gain by connecting this? And the second associated question, if you have in your chancelleries, in your foreign services, or in your industries in private sector, a kind of innovation diplomacy strategy, which is linking knowledge abroad to your foreign trade, innovation, and industrial policy domestically. Thank you.
We have to answer that in 90 seconds. Who would like to start? Roberto or Martin? Okay.
Well, I can answer very swift the last question. Actually, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Peru, we do have a division in charge of science and technology. Their main focus is to create a network between all the Peruvian scientists that are working abroad, and to try to create a synergy with the scientists that are in Peru, and to exchange ideas, to exchange experiences. And we are on the verge of having the first international conference of Peruvian scientists in Peru. We've been doing this in the last 2-3 years in the United States. All the Peruvian scientists that are in the US, they gather together in some specific city. We are replicating this idea in Europe, in Brussels, and the next stage is to bring all the Peruvian scientists to Peru. And this is something very, very important for us, and we have established a coordination with the Office of the Prime Minister and with the National Science and Technological Institute. So as I mentioned, no, we are very focused on innovation, we are very focused on technology, and this is something, a fact, a concrete fact, knowing how are we working on that.
Okay, thank you. Martin?
Very briefly.
And we just want to make sure you watch the time. We've got like 10 seconds.
Absolutely. we have two specific programs.
Yes.
One is a network of scientists abroad that are trying to connect with the capital and among each other. And the other one is specific programs for the diaspora to come to the government with a specific idea and try to develop. But actually you are helping us with that, because here I'm on the public. I met Uruguayans that are in the IT sector, in the audiovisual sector, and are willing to do something with us. So thank you for providing the opportunity.
Okay.
And just 2 seconds to answer to the question from the lady. I'm convinced that Latin America is one of the regions that can provide, not only to Canada, but to the world, the ethical angle of AI.
Okay. Hey, Eugenio? Maybe. Hey, Eugenio, would you like to just very quickly?
Very simple. Taking into account the different upheavals in Argentina with coup d'etat, etc., we have thousands of scientists abroad. We have had programs to bring them back to Argentina. It worked, then they move out, etc. So we have different networks of scientists, tech people, etc. Even through them, some years ago, the Max Planck Institute brought headquarters 1 year to Buenos Aires. So we have that experience. We also have a special department in Foreign Affairs that deals with technology.
Excellent.
And it's across the whole structure of the state dealing with that.
Excellent. Okay, Federico.
Just to end, so 2 things. Even though innovation is a mindset and it's not about bureaucracy, by the end of this year, we're going to convert our most important science institution into a ministry. It's going to become the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology, and diplomatic innovation and diplomacy. I'm finishing this talk now. I'm going to Sidewalk Labs here in Toronto with Google to see what's going on and report to my government. So that's diplomatic innovation as well, no?
Fantastic, absolutely. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I want to thank our distinguished panel for enlightening us and being insightful, and I hope that you've learned something from what they've stated to you this morning, and you can actually incorporate this in your plan for your business and or your association to connect to Latin America and creating opportunity between Canada and your respective Latin American country or countries that you're looking at doing business in. I want to thank, obviously, the Global Forum and the Toronto edition for hosting us here today and having this event. I also want to thank my team of amazingly talented men and women as part of the economic development team for the City of Toronto. And I think, you know, as we asked a lot of questions and we've learned a little bit about what's happening in the region, it all comes down to us as individuals. As we plan and prepare our organizations to do business in countries, whether or not it's Latin America, we're focused on Latin America now, but I mean, obviously it's the world. What we do and how we do it will actually be obviously and transformational in terms of the changes in the new economy that's actually taking place. We've learned about what's happening in South America. It's really up to you now, and I know that all the consulates, they have representatives who can work with you to deal with your questions and to help you to launch your business. I think there's great opportunities in Latin America, both from a Canadian perspective and vice versa, because trade has to make sense for all parties that are involved. And at the end of the day, our focus is really about helping people and to create better opportunities for improvement and ensuring that no one gets left behind, because the technological change that you're bringing forward has to also equally be metered out to ensure that those who are part of our human family have got to be trained in order to be able to scale up in order to allow them to have prosperity as well, so that it's a shared process for all of us. And I think we all have a responsibility to ensure that everyone has an opportunity both in terms of utilization of technology as well as the wealth creation that's actually being created so we can share all together into prosperity. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.